Sign here, and we'll take care of everything. My son's voice was so calm, so assured, as if we were discussing grocery lists instead of my entire life's work. I sat across from Burek and his wife Selin at the notary's office, the deed to my house spread between us like a map of surrender. The overhead light buzzed faintly. Outside, rush hour traffic hummed on Madison Street. The notary's assistant shuffled papers in the corner. Everything felt ordinary, routine, safe. Except it wasn't. Burek had his hand on my shoulder, that familiar weight I'd felt since he was 5 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. I used to tell him there was nothing in the dark that wasn't there in the light. Now he was 32, married, working in finance, and I was 56 and alone, and I was the one who felt afraid of things I couldn't see. "Mom, you're getting older," he'd said, last Tuesday over coffee at my kitchen table. "The house is too much for you. Let us handle it. We'll take care of you. You can even keep living there, rent-free. It just makes sense to put it in our name for estate planning." Selin had nodded, her lawyer's smile in place, smooth and practiced. "It'll save on taxes down the line, Margaret. Trust me. I do this for clients all the time." I'd wanted to believe them. I'd wanted to believe that my son saw me, loved me, wanted to protect me from the burden of maintenance and property taxes and the endless worry of aging alone. The house on Oleander Avenue was all I had left after the hardware store closed and my husband died 3 years ago. 40 years of marriage, 30 years of running a business, and what did I have to show for it? 4 walls, a mortgage I'd just finished paying off, and a son who said he wanted to help. But what good was a house if I died alone in it? And what good was pride if my son was offering his hand? The notary, a thin man named Wallace, with reading glasses perched on his nose, slid the document toward me. "Mrs. Delgado, you've reviewed all the terms." "Yes. And you understand that by signing this quitclaim deed, you're transferring full ownership of the property located at 428 Oleander Avenue to Burek and Selin Torres with no financial compensation." "She understands," Selin said quickly. "It's a family transfer." I picked up the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. Burek squeezed my shoulder. Selin checked her phone, her manicured nails tapping the screen. The clock on the wall ticked. I thought about Sunday dinners at that house, about teaching Burek to ride a bike in the driveway, about my husband's workshop in the garage where he'd spent his weekends building bookshelves and fixing neighbors' lawnmowers for free. That's when the notary's assistant walked past my chair. She was a young woman, maybe 25, with tired eyes and a name tag that read Jessica. She stumbled slightly as she passed, reaching out to steady herself on the edge of the table. A yellow post-it note fluttered from her hand onto my lap. I glanced down. The handwriting was hurried, urgent, the ink pressed hard into the paper. "Lien on title. Be careful." I froze. Jessica was already across the room, filing papers in a cabinet, her back to me. I looked at Burek. He was smiling at me. That same open, trusting smile from his childhood, the one that used to melt my heart when he wanted an extra cookie or forgiveness for breaking a lamp. I looked at Selin. She was typing something on her phone, her jaw set in that expression I'd come to recognize over the past 2 years of her marriage to my son. She was always working, always managing, always in control. "What's wrong, Mom?" Burek asked. "You okay?" I folded the post-it into my palm, hiding it. My pulse hammered in my ears. I need to see the title report again. Wallace blinked. "We went over that already, ma'am. Everything's in order." "I'd like to see it again, please." He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he had 3 more appointments today and a wife waiting at home with dinner. But he pulled the document from the stack and handed it to me. I scanned the pages, my eyes jumping over the legal jargon, property description, tax assessments, easements, and then buried near the back, in a section labeled encumbrances, I saw it. A lien, recorded 3 months ago. The amount was $60,000. The creditor was listed as Northridge Financial Group. My throat tightened. "What is this lien?" Burek leaned forward, frowning. "What lien?" I pointed to the line, my finger trembling slightly. "This one, right here. It says there's a $60,000 lien on my property." Selin set her phone down. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes, quick as a snake. That's probably just a clerical error, Margaret. Title companies make mistakes all the time. It happens. Does it? Yes. All the time. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that belonged in a courtroom, the kind that concealed more than it revealed. Look, if you sign the transfer today, Burke and I will handle clearing it up. It's actually easier that way. Once the house is in our name, we can dispute the lien directly with the title company. You won't have to deal with any of it. Burke nodded, squeezing my shoulder again. Exactly, Mom. Don't worry about it. We've got this. You've been stressed enough already. I looked down at the post-it note in my hand, the words barely visible between my fingers. Be careful. I looked at Jessica across the room. She wasn't looking at me, but her shoulders were tense, her movements quick and nervous. I need to check on this first, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mom, I'm not signing today. The room went still. Wallace looked relieved, probably glad to avoid a family drama in his office. Burke looked confused, his hand dropping from my shoulder. Selin looked furious for just a fraction of a second before she smoothed her face back into calm, professional pleasantness. Margaret, Selin said quietly, don't you trust us? We're family. I met her gaze, her eyes were the color of cold coffee. I trust my son. I didn't say the rest. I didn't say that I wasn't sure I trusted her, that something in her smile made my stomach turn, that the post-it note in my hand felt like a lifeline thrown from a sinking ship. I stood up, gathering my purse. I'll call you tomorrow, Burke. Mom, wait. Let's just talk about this. Tomorrow. I walked out of that office with the post-it note clutched in my fist, and my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning. Be careful. Who had written it? Why? What did Jessica know that I didn't? I parked in my driveway and sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the house I'd lived in for 30 years. The rose bushes my husband planted were blooming. The porch light I'd replaced last month glowed softly in the dusk. This was mine. I'd earned it. I'd bled for it. And someone was trying to take it. I called my old friend Ruth, who'd worked in real estate for 30 years before retiring. She answered on the second ring. Margaret, what's wrong? You sound awful. I told her everything. The notary, the lien, the post-it note. The way Selin had dismissed it so quickly. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you need to go to the county recorder's office first thing tomorrow morning. Get copies of everything. And Margaret, don't sign anything else until you talk to a lawyer. Do you think Burke knows? I don't know, honey. But you need to find out. That night, I barely slept. I kept getting up to check the locks on the doors, to peer out the windows at the empty street. Burke called twice. I didn't answer. He left voicemails, his voice tight with frustration. Mom, why are you being like this? We're trying to help you. This is ridiculous. Just call me back. I listened to his messages 3 times, searching for something I couldn't name. Guilt, anger, fear. All I heard was impatience, the tone of someone who'd been inconvenienced. The next morning, I was at the county recorder's office when it opened at 8. The building smelled like old paper and floor polish. A clerk, named Donna, a woman about my age, with bifocals on a chain, pulled up my property records on her computer. She frowned at the screen, her mouth tightening. Yes, ma'am. There's definitely a lien here. Recorded April 10th. Northridge Financial Group. $60,000. What does that mean exactly? Donna looked at me over her glasses. It means they claim you owe them $60,000, and they've placed a lien on your house as collateral. If you don't pay, they can force a sale to recover the debt. My chest tightened. The fluorescent lights overhead suddenly felt too bright. I don't owe anyone $60,000. I've never even heard of Northridge Financial Group. You'd need to contact them directly to dispute it, or get a lawyer. Can I get copies of everything? She printed out a thick stack of papers, the machine humming and spitting out pages one by one. I paid the copying fee and sat in my car in the parking lot, going through every document, line by line. The lien had been filed by someone named Aaron Grimes on behalf of Northridge Financial Group. There was a notarized affidavit attached, claiming I'd signed a promissory note on March 22nd. March 22nd. I checked my calendar on my phone. That was the day I'd driven to Seattle to visit my sister after her hip surgery. I'd been gone for 4 days. I couldn't have signed anything. This was fraud. I called Ruth again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She gave me the number of a real estate attorney named Ed Kowalski, said he'd handled a case for her neighbor last year and won. I called him immediately. His secretary said he had an opening at noon if I could come in. I could. Ed Kowalski's office was in a converted house on Elm Street, the kind of place with creaky wooden floors and bookshelves stuffed with legal volumes. Ed himself was a heavy man in his 60s, with a kind face and a desk covered in files and coffee rings. I sat across from him and explained everything, my voice steady even though my hands were trembling. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set his pen down and leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Delgado, this is fraud. Clear-cut fraud. Can you prove it? We'll need to subpoena the original promissory note from Northridge Financial. If your signature is forged, and I'm betting it is, we can get the lien removed and possibly file criminal charges, but it'll take time." "How much time?" "Weeks. Maybe a couple of months if they fight it." I thought of Burak's face at the notary's office yesterday. I thought of Selin's quick dismissal of the lien, her eagerness to get my signature on the deed. What if my son is involved? Or his wife? Ed looked at me over his glasses. "Is there reason to think they are?" "His wife is a lawyer. She's the one who suggested the transfer, and when I brought up the lien, she tried to brush it off like it was nothing." Ed set his notepad down carefully. "Mrs. Delgado, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Does your son or his wife have access to your personal documents? Your social security number, your banking information, copies of your identification?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I gave Burak power of attorney 2 years ago when I had surgery. He helped me with bills while I was recovering." Ed exhaled slowly through his nose. "We need to revoke that power of attorney immediately. Today. Right now. But he's my son." "I know." His voice was gentle but firm. "But someone filed a fraudulent lien on your house. Someone who had access to your personal information. And if your son or his wife had that access, they're suspects until we prove otherwise." The word hung in the air between us. Suspects. I signed the revocation papers in Ed's office, my signature shaky and weak-looking compared to my usual confident scrawl. My hand felt like it belonged to someone else. Ed filed the revocation electronically while I sat there, numb and cold, despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the window. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number. "I'm calling Northridge Financial Group," he said. "Let's see what they have to say." He put the call on speaker. The receptionist answered with a chipper voice and transferred him once, twice, 3 times. Each transfer felt like an eternity. Finally, a man answered, his voice clipped and professional. "Aaron Grimes." "Mr. Grimes, this is Ed Kowalski. I'm an attorney representing Mrs. Margaret Delgado. I'm calling about a lien you filed on her property on April 10th. Silence. I could hear Grimes breathing on the other end, could hear papers rustling. "What about it?" "My client states unequivocally that she never signed a promissory note with your company. She was out of state on the date the note was allegedly executed. We're prepared to file a fraud complaint with the district attorney's office and pursue civil damages unless you provide the original signed promissory note within 48 hours. Another pause, longer this time. "I'll have to check our records." "You do that. And Mr. Grimes, I'm ceasing the state attorney general's office on this matter as well. If this lien was filed fraudulently, you and your company are facing serious criminal charges." The line went dead. Ed set the phone down and looked at me. "He's not going to produce that note. Because it doesn't exist? Because it's fake, and he knows it. My guess, he'll either claim the documents were lost, or he'll try to withdraw the lien quietly and hope we don't pursue charges. What do I do now? You go home, you don't sign anything, you don't talk to your son or his wife without me present, and you wait." I drove home in a daze, the afternoon sun too bright, the streets too loud. When I turned onto Oleander Avenue, my heart sank. Burak's car was in my driveway. He was sitting on the front porch steps, his head in his hands, his shoulders hunched. When I got out of my car, he stood up. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" "Selin called me this morning. Said you just walked out yesterday. You won't return my calls." I've been sitting here for an hour. Are you okay? I unlocked the front door. Come inside. We sat in the living room, him on the couch where he used to watch cartoons as a kid, me in the armchair that used to be his father's. The afternoon light came through the windows, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. I told him everything. The post-it note, the county recorder's office, the fraudulent lien, the attorney. I watched his face as I spoke, searching for guilt, for recognition, for anything that would tell me whether my son was a victim or a conspirator. He looked genuinely shocked. His face went pale, his mouth opened and closed without sound. Mom, I didn't know about any lien. I swear to God, I didn't know. Did Selin? He hesitated. It was barely a second, barely a breath. But I saw it, that moment of calculation, of deciding what to say. Barak, did Selin know about this lien? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd had since he was a teenager whenever he was stressed. She mentioned something last month about needing to clear up some paperwork on the house before the transfer. But I thought she meant old utility bills or something. I didn't know it was this. I swear, Mom, I didn't know. Where is she right now? At her office. She had a court appearance this morning. I stood up. Take me there. Mom, I don't think. Take me there, Barak, right now, or I'm driving there myself, and I'll make a scene in her lobby that she'll never forget. He drove. The silence between us was thick and terrible, punctuated only by the sound of traffic and the air conditioning in his car. Selin's law office was in a small professional building downtown, above a coffee shop and next to an insurance agency. We climbed the narrow stairs, our footsteps echoing. Barak unlocked the door with a key. I didn't know he had. The office was small, but expensively decorated. Leather chairs, a glass desk, framed diplomas on the wall. The receptionist, a young man in a tie, looked up in surprise. Mr. Torres, Mrs. Torres is still in court. She won't be back until 3. We'll wait, I said. Actually, Barak said quietly. We won't. He walked past the reception desk to Selin's private office. The receptionist started to protest, but Barak held up his key. It's fine, Marcus. Family business. We went into Selin's office. It smelled like her perfume, something expensive and floral. Barak stood there for a moment, looking around as if seeing the space for the first time. Then he walked to her desk and opened the bottom drawer. Barak. What are you? She keeps client files in here, one she's working on. You can't just. She's my wife, Mom, and if she did what I think she did. He pulled out a file. My name was written on the tab, in Selin's neat handwriting. Oh God. He opened it on the desk. Inside were photocopies of my personal documents, my social security card, my birth certificate, bank statements from the last 2 years, my property deed, and there, clipped to the inside cover, was a promissory note on Northridge Financial Group letterhead. At the bottom was my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close, incredibly close. Someone had studied my handwriting, had practiced it, but the loop on the G and my last name was wrong. I always made it small and tight, a habit from decades of signing invoices at the hardware store. This G was too open, too loose. Barak, I whispered. He stared at the document, his face slack with shock. He picked it up with shaking hands. I didn't know, Mom. I swear on Dad's grave, I didn't know she was doing this. But she did. She must have. His voice broke. She must have been planning this for months. The power of attorney, the financial records, the promissory note. She was going to steal your house. We were going to steal my house, I said quietly. You were part of this whether you knew the details or not. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. I thought we were helping you. By taking my house? By making sure you'd be taken care of. By making sure that if something happened to you, we'd be there, and you wouldn't end up in some nursing home with strangers. He was shouting now, his face red. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing would have been to ask me what I wanted. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything in the file. Every document, every page. Barak didn't try to stop me. He just stood there, holding that fake promissory note, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I called Ed Kowalski. He answered immediately. Margaret? I found the promissory note. It's in my daughter-in-law's office. The signature is forged. Don't touch anything else. Get out of there now and meet me at the police station. Which one? Downtown precinct. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes, and Margaret, bring your son. Burak drove us to the police station. He didn't say a single word the entire way. I didn't either. What was there to say? My daughter-in-law had spent months planning to steal my house using fraudulent documents, and my son had been her accomplice, whether willingly or not. The son I'd raised, the boy I'd taught to tie his shoes and ride a bike and treat people with honesty and respect. At the police station, we were directed to the detective division. A detective named Santos, a tired-looking man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair, took us into an interview room. Ed Kowalski arrived 5 minutes later with a briefcase. I showed Santos the photos on my phone. I explained everything from the beginning: the notary visit, the post-it note, the lien, the fake promissory note in Selin's office. Santos listened, taking notes. Then he made a phone call. Then another. Ed made calls too, his voice sharp and professional, as he spoke with someone at the district attorney's office. 2 hours later, we were still sitting there when Santos came back into the room. Mrs. Delgado, I've contacted Northridge Financial Group. They're cooperating fully with our investigation. Turns out Aaron Grimes, the man who filed the lien, is a former colleague of your daughter-in-law. They worked together at a firm in Tacoma 3 years ago. My stomach dropped. So she planned this. It looks that way. We're getting a warrant for her office and her home. We're also pulling phone records and emails. He looked at Burak, his expression unreadable. Mr. Torres, we're going to need to ask you some questions. You have the right to have an attorney present. Burak's face went gray. Am I being charged with something? Not yet, but your level of involvement needs to be determined. I'll represent him, Ed said immediately. Anything he says is covered by attorney-client privilege. But for the record, my client had no knowledge of the fraudulent documents and has cooperated fully with this investigation. Santos nodded slowly. We'll see. They took Burak into another room. I sat in the waiting area with Ed, drinking bad coffee from a vending machine and watching the clock on the wall tick forward. At 4:30, Santos came out and said Selin was being brought in for questioning. At 5:15, I saw her through the glass doors of the station, walking in with her own attorney, a sleek woman in a gray suit. Selin saw me sitting there. Our eyes met. Her face didn't change. She looked calm, composed, utterly in control. Margaret, she said as she walked past. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't answer. I just watched her disappear into the interview rooms. At 6, Santos came out again. Mrs. Delgado, we're opening a formal criminal investigation. The promissory note is clearly forged, and we have evidence of conspiracy between Mrs. Torres and Aaron Grimes. Based on phone records, they've been in contact regularly for the past 4 months. What happens now? We'll file charges: fraud, forgery, possibly conspiracy to commit theft. The lien on your property will be removed. Your house is safe. I exhaled, a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 2 days. My house was safe. But everything else was gone. Selin was arrested that evening and released on bond 2 hours later. Burak called me from the station at 9, his voice raw from crying. Mom, please. I didn't know what she was doing. You have to believe me. I would never hurt you. Please, Mom, please. I want to believe you, Burak. Then do, please. I'm your son. I love you. But love wasn't the problem. Trust was. Even if Burak hadn't known about the forged documents, he'd been ready to push me into signing over my house without question. He'd dismissed my concerns at the notary's office. He'd told me to trust him, and Selin, to just sign, to not worry. He'd put his wife's word above mine. The case took 6 months to win through the courts. Selin pled guilty to fraud and forgery in October as part of a plea deal. She lost her law license, was sentenced to 2 years in prison with half suspended, and was ordered to pay restitution. Aaron Grimes was charged separately and also pled guilty. The lien was removed from my property in July, but I didn't sleep well until I saw the corrected title report with my own eyes. Ed Kowalski didn't charge me a dime for his work. He said it was worth it to nail someone like Selin, that she'd probably done this before to other people who were too scared or too confused to fight back. Burak and I don't talk much anymore. He sends text messages sometimes, apologies that feel hollow and practiced. He says he's filed for divorce. He says he's in therapy. He says he wants to rebuild our relationship, but I can't forget the look on his face at the notary's office, the way he'd squeezed my shoulder and told me to sign, the way he'd dismissed my questions, as if they were the confused worries of an old woman who didn't understand modern estate planning. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive him. Maybe someday I'll be able to trust him again. But not today. I still live in my house on Oleander Avenue. I had the locks changed the day after Salen's arrest. I revoked every power of attorney, every shared bank account, every piece of access I'd given to anyone. I keep my important documents in a safe deposit box at the bank now. Ruth comes over on Sundays and we drink coffee on the back patio and talk about her grandchildren and her garden and everything except what happened. I'm grateful for her. I'm grateful for the notary's assistant, Jessica, who saw something wrong and took a risk to warn me. I looked for her after everything was settled, wanted to thank her, but she'd quit her job and moved away. I hope she's doing well. I hope she knows she saved me. The yellow post-it note is framed on my living room wall now, next to a photo of my husband in his workshop and a picture of the hardware store on opening day. Be careful. 2 words that changed everything. A warning from a stranger who could have stayed silent, who could have decided it wasn't her business, who could have let me sign away my entire life. She didn't. And because of that, I still have a home. I'm careful now in ways I wasn't before. I read every document 3 times. I ask questions. I don't let anyone pressure me into decisions, not with kindness, not with urgency, not with guilt. I trust my instincts. And when something feels wrong, I stop and I investigate, even if it means disappointing people, even if it means facing ugly truths I'd rather not see. If someone you love ever pressures you to sign something that feels wrong, listen to that feeling. If they dismiss your concerns or tell you to just trust them, stop. If a stranger ever slips you a warning, believe them. Your instincts exist for a reason. They're not paranoia. They're not confusion. They're not the weakness of age. They're the accumulated wisdom of every risk you've ever survived, every danger you've ever sensed, every person who's ever tried to take advantage of you. Your instincts might just save everything you have left.